Okay. This right here, this little circle right here is really important. You should be able to draw that circle with the names, because it really does help to be able to understand and visualize the way ITIL is laid out. Okay. But in essence, the center of what ITIL is the strategy. How do we even begin to create a new service or modify an existing service? If we have an existing service within an organization that we want to modify, we cannot just modify it without going through the proper process of strategizing. You need to create a strategy for any modifications that you're going to perform to an existing service. Because that's basically what we're trying to do. We're trying to manage company services. And how do we manage those services? By utilizing the infrastructure library concepts. And so if you're in a company and let's say you have an idea for a new service, well, you can't just implement that service without going through the proper channels. You have to go through the proper authorization process. Okay? You have to advocate. You have to prove that the concept that you're bringing forward is a concept that brings value to the organization. The purpose of utilizing the information technology infrastructure library is to assist in accomplishing the mission, the vision, the goals, and the objectives of the organization. Whatever service you're going to bring forward or propose is a service that needs to add value in some extent to the overall mission and vision of the organization. It is my personal experience that you are more likely to be successful in a company if you understand, if you digest the mission, the vision, the goals and the objectives of an organization. Because then whatever you do within the organization, you do it with the parameters of trying to bring value to the organization's mission, vision, goals and objectives. Am I boring you already? Okay. So another thing that's really important is, and this is not necessarily part of the ITIL concept, but I think it's really important to understand is that if I'm going to have a good understanding of where the organization is going, the direction in which it's going, I need to have a good understanding of the strategic plan. Okay, at what point do we build a strategic plan? We build a strategic plan right here during the service strategy phase of the information technology infrastructure library recommendations, right? Because these are recommendations. The ITIL concepts are not standards. They're not laws. They're not requirements. They are recommendations. They are non-prescriptive. What does that mean? That means that we're not prescribing that you do it exactly the way it's laid out, but rather the ITIL concepts here give a foundation for how a company will operate in the various areas of what's important within a company, such as, for example, the people. The people are really important within a company. That's why a lot of companies have a high rate of turnover. They lose their employees, and then they have to hire new employees. Well, that's costly to the company. What companies really want to do is hire employees and keep them, okay? Because it takes financial, means in order to train somebody for a new job, a new position. And I'd rather keep the people that I already have than to have to retrain somebody else. And so employee retention, right? It's along the lines of the people aspect of what's important for a company. And then the other aspect that's important is what we call the products. Okay? I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but I want you to understand that for a company to be able to strategize effectively, it needs to take into consideration various aspects of what's important. And so the people is really important. If I don't have the talent, then that's a problem. Okay? And so we need a way of how we're going to address the issue. But that's kind of, I'm getting ahead of myself here. We'll get to that point when we get to service design. But from a service strategy perspective, one of the main concepts of service strategy is value creation. Remember we talked about value creation briefly on Friday? We discussed the fact that even though this program is free, it's not really free, right? There is a value. If we put a number on the value that this program has for every individual, we are estimating anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. Okay? The overall, including all the services that you're getting here and the access to the material and the training and the whole process of getting you from point A to point B. And so value creation is really important. When we're talking about service strategy, I'm thinking value creation, okay? Who drives value? That's what I'm thinking about as well. Who drives value? Who decides whether a product is valuable or not? The customer decides whether a product is valuable or not. This is why iPhones are $900, because you, the consumer, have made a statement to the world that these devices hold a greater value. If everybody stopped buying Apple equipment, they will have to sell them for a lot less. If people felt that there was no value in those devices, then they would have to lower their prices. Okay? So these devices are expensive because of you. It's your fault, right? You, the consumer, are willing to pay $900 for an iPhone, and so they're not going to lower the price because you keep buying the equipment. You see that? Who drives value? The customer drives value. We're going to dive into more detail about that, but that's a really important concept from a service strategy perspective. Why is that important? Because if I'm bringing forth a new service, I need to be able to prove to my executives, the people who have the power to sign those checks, right? That's the process of strategizing. Okay, I have this great idea. This happens all the time. People always have great ideas. People come here to this class and they always have a great ideas of how this program could be better. I have these great ideas. Why are you guys not doing it like this or like that? Like, hold on. You can't just force the change. You have to make a case. You have to make a case. And this is why sometimes we know that something needs to change, but we're not changing it yet because we haven't made a case. And maybe I can give an example. We were trying to deploy one of my previous jobs, a new training program, a CCNA training program. And one of the instructors, who is really good at what he does, this guy has been working in the industry for many years, and he just knows the material really well, and he wanted to deploy a new CCNA program, and I happened to be the director of the program at the time, okay? But I also had an executive director above me. And so he was really frustrated because, I said, okay, well, let's have a meeting to discuss whether we can make this happen or not. Okay, this guy don't want to have a meeting. He just wants to go do it because he feels that this is what we need in this organization. Well, you can't just do that. You have to make a case because we need to make sure that we understand whether we have the financial capability to do it, okay? Whether we have the equipment necessary to make it happen, whether we have the human resources necessary, okay? whether the demand is high enough in the field that justifies us spending those kinds of dollars. This is what we call a business case. That's another concept. You should be writing this down, I tell you. When I'm thinking of service strategy, I'm thinking of a business case. Value creation, okay? Those are some of the two main concepts that I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about strategizing. So what we had to do in that case is have a meeting and go, okay, do we have the equipment? No, we don't have the equipment. We don't have the switches and the routers, and and how much does it cost? It's going to cost like, if we're going to do this right, we need $60,000 to buy the equipment that we need, so that we can create this training program and have the students, give the students the opportunity to actually put their hands on actual equipment. You guys with me? Eye contact, remember? And so he was really frustrated because when we met, I said, I agree that we should bring this program to the community. But bottom line is we don't have the equipment, okay? We don't have the dollars to make it happen. We're going to need to become a Cisco Academy, and we're not a Cisco Academy yet. That's going to take administrative power, right? So administrative processes. And so we can't make it happen right now. And the guy was like really mad and really frustrated because we decided based on the facts that he didn't have a real business case. He had not thought about the fact that we needed to have equipment, and we needed to write curriculum, and we needed to figure out how to administratively make things right within the parameters of the law. Are we in compliance with ordinances? Okay? You can't just go teach a class without making sure, or open a new business or start a new service without making sure that the stakeholders know about what you're trying to do and have an opportunity to provide some feedback. Okay, and so we had to drop it, and he was just upset. Well, too bad. So, but what we did, okay, with the executive director is that, we started strategizing on how we could get the equipment. Okay, what did we have to do it and do it right, and not just do a program ad hoc. Luckily, we were able to build a relationship with Cisco, and they ended up giving us $100,000 worth of equipment for us to deploy it, and then I got involved with the people responsible for administering the Cisco Academy, so we turned the organization into a Cisco Academy. And then because we were governed by the Bureau of Private and Post-Secondary Education, which is a branch of the Better Business Bureau, who governs entities like this in California, who provide training to individuals. So there was a process for making sure that we were within the parameters of the law, right? You have to fill out some applications, send them to the state. You need to write curriculum. You need to have the whole concept put together already. You can't just, start teaching the class and you haven't been approved by the state to teach the class. And so you see how all those things need to be put in place, and it's like people have this great idea, man, you guys should launch an IT program like cybersecurity. It's not that easy. You need to make a case, right? And because you have one idea, it doesn't mean that you have all your angles covered. Okay, you have to think about the angles, which means that if you want to advocate for a new program or a new service, you have to do your homework, which means that I may need to go and gather some information from the field to figure out how many companies are hiring, for example, people who have CCNA knowledge, right? What is the years of experience required, right? What is the hands-on abilities that are required to perform that job? And that's just an example. Because it could be a whole different product. It could be that you're working for a company that is trying to bring a new service to, into the company. Say a hospital environment, they're trying to bring in X-ray, the capability for the hospital to do X-rays locally so that they don't have to send them out to an external source. Well, where was I?
X-ray, talking about
Okay, let's say that somebody wants to bring in the service. Okay, well, let's think about the cost. We're going to need a location. We're going to need office space. We're going to need human resources. We're going to need partners that provide, whatever equipment we need in order to make it happen. And so we have to build a business case, which means that I may need to also go into the field and figure out what the cost is and how that compares to what we're going to do and how that brings value to the company by reducing the overall cost. You guys with me? And so a few things there that I just gave you. We're going to go over this again, so don't worry if I just lost you. Okay? But when I'm thinking of service strategy, I'm thinking, okay, we need to strategize on a new service or a new product, and we need to make a business case. In order to make a business case, I may need to go out in the field and figure out what the patterns of business activity are in the field. Maybe we've been conducting business for a certain amount of time, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and we have data that we can look at to say, okay, this is how we've been operating over the months, and we can bring these numbers, these percentages up to this level if we bring this service forward, right? So patterns of business activities could be a tool that I can utilize to bring to the executives who have the power to give me a green light to move forward with a new service in order for me to make a business case, okay? But we'll discuss this more in detail. But once we put together our service strategy, we move on to the design. Let's say that you got a green light. They gave you a green light. They said, okay, this is a good service. Go ahead and move forward. Well, now we're going to need to design it. I'm going to need to go and find the people. Go and make agreements with other organizations. Maybe within a company, you have different departments. You guys see that? You have different departments. And in order to bring a new service to life, I'm going to need to have this department and that department and that department and this department have internal agreements of how they are going to operate. I'm not just going to deploy any service here that relies on the proper function of this department without making written agreements with the people, the shot callers, the people responsible for that department. I'm going to need to get a buy-in from the team leader or the team manager. I may need to run that by the security department. Make sure that I get a green light from the security manager to move on with this service. Okay? And so I may need to either have internal departments have written agreements, or I may need to go outside the company and create what we call contracts with external suppliers, for example. I may need to work with human resources to make sure that they help me obtain the proper human resources necessary to make this design, to make this work. And so at this point, I'm actually taking action. Right here, we're just talking. Right here, we're just bouncing ideas. And I'm just trying to get a signature from the executives, if you will, from the people who have the ability to give you the power, the champions, if you will. This is where we define champions. A champion is a person who champions or advocates on behalf of the idea that you had. And this person has executive power. Okay, so that person will help you, if you will. Make sure that you get what you need. But right here, we're actually deciding. We're writing contracts. We're making agreements. I'm actually going to the location and say, okay, we're going to need real estate. We need a space to make this happen. Do we have the computer equipment? Well, maybe I'm not a computer person, and so I need to go and talk to the IT department, the IT manager. Call them up and let's have a meeting, man. Let's talk about you know, let's talk about equipment. This is the service that I'm trying to bring to life. Do we have the equipment already, or you tell me what equipment we need in order to make it happen? I don't know. I'm not a techie guy, right? At this point, from a strategy or design perspective. So I may need to actually have meetings with the IT guy and make sure that I get a list of the equipment that I need, okay? This is probably not the first meeting. I probably had a meeting with that person during the service strategy portion, because I needed to have an idea of how much money I needed to ask for. This is where we also create a budget, right? We create a budget here in the service strategy, but in the service design, we're actually implementing that budget. We're designing the service. And then after we design it, this is also where we create a catalog so that people can actually look at the services that we're providing. Catalog creation happens here during the service design. And then we move on to the transition, where we're transitioning into the actual operation. And so in here, this is where we're going to deal with change management, for example. If there's something needs to be changed, it needs to happen here in the transition. This is where we're going to turn on all the devices. We're going to actually test the equipment, right? There's a beta testing steps that may need to take place at this point, and then we transition into operation, right? Because we're transitioning the design into operation. Now we are actually live. We are actually offering the service to the individuals who need it, and we're conducting actual operations. And during this stage, for example, we're providing desktop support, customer support. People might be calling in and saying, hey, I need some assistance. This is not working. The website just crashed, just like our website this morning. And so at some point we're gonna have to stop, or not stop, but we're gonna have to have a meeting and bring in all the information on how we are doing. Did we strategize correctly? Did we design correctly? Is it effective? Did we transition effectively? How are we operating? What is the customer feedback? Are they satisfied? Because if they're not satisfied, what happens? The value, right? The value decreases. And if the value decreases, then my sales drop. And if my sales drop, then I have to lower the prices. You see how that works? And so we're going to need to stop, and we're going to need to evaluate what we are doing and how we are doing it. This is what we call the continuous service improvement, and there are some specific steps that you take in order to evaluate whether we're providing an effective service or not. And then we're going to need action items to make the adjustments, to make the change. You see that? It may be, and notice how continuous services improvement is connected to all the steps. Yeah, it's connected to here, it's connected to here, it's connected to here, right? It covers all of it. Just like service strategy, touches on here, touches on here, touches on here. Why? Because it may be that we're in operation, but we're going to need to go, we're going to recommend a change, an immediate change, because there may be things that can be changed immediately. And there may be things that can wait. Things that can wait, we can wait until we have a continual service improvement meeting process, a formal process, or we need a change immediately, an emergency. This is what we call an emergency change. And so there's a process for that as well. But you see why it's touching in all of the phases, because we can actually stop and analyze how we're doing during the transition, and then improve the process. Continual service improvement, right? This is the cycle of ITIL, the 5 phases: service strategy, service design, service transition, service operation, and continual service improvement, in that order. In that order. So you may get a question that says, which of the following is the third phase of the ITIL framework? Well, the third one is service transition. Which one is the fifth one? CSI, Continual Service Improvement, CSI, there's an acronym for you. Speaking of acronyms, we use acronyms a lot in ITIL to describe even the phases of the ITIL process, right? So service strategy is SS, service design is SD, service transition is ST, service operation is SO, and continual service improvement is CSI. Okay, so let's see. IT requires increasingly advanced methods to meet business needs. Let's see. The business depends on IT to deliver the value, so this is why it's really important. The IT department is really important in this whole operation because we're trying to align to the mission, vision, goals, and objectives, which is what I mentioned earlier. IT must align to the mission, vision, goals, and objectives. That's test question right there. What is the objective of IT? Is to align to the mission, vision, goals, and objectives of the organization. We're trying to provide high quality. That's why we have the continual service improvement process in place, because we're trying to increase the quality of the services that we provide. Cost effective, meaning that cost effective to the company, cost effective to the customer. Let's see what else. Service management is one of the processes. Okay, let me see if, because I'm not sure with my, oh, there, right there. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to dive into the processes before I give you a high-level view of the processes. Okay, every phase has a number of processes. There are 26 different processes. So if I'm dealing with the service strategy, the processes that I'm dealing with is the management of the strategy. Dictates that somebody needs to be responsible to manage the process of strategizing. That's probably going to be a champion, an executive, right? We'll talk about that more. We need to manage finances, financial management. Again, if you're proposing, if you have this great, wonderful idea, well, let's do financial management. Do we have the dollars? Let's create a budget. You may have to create a proposed budget, a draft, and run it through the people who have a stake in the service that you're trying to provide. We're trying to manage the portfolio. This is the actual list of services that a company provides. And so this process, we are making some decisions, right? We're making some decisions on the portfolio. We are trying to do demand management, meaning we need to look at the market to see what the demand is in order to figure out whether this service is a service that will add value to the organization or not. Maybe we need to change it, maybe we need to discontinue it, okay? Maybe we need to bring it back because it wasn't valuable in the past, so we discontinue it, and now we need to bring it back because now suddenly customers have decided that this product has value. Look at LPs, right? We're going retro. Right now, everybody going retro. Everybody has a turntable in their home, right, with LPs and vinyl, right, and they're scratching the whole 9 yards. Now people are bringing back cassette tapes. Hey, I went to an electronics store. I'm not going to say the name because this is going to go live on YouTube, but they had Polaroid cameras, the old ones, the ones that take instant pictures, and then it prints out the paper off of the camera, and then you dry it, and the picture, it reveals the image. $120. They're refurbished.
Wow. I got one.
You see that? You see that? But why are they doing that? Because we're bringing back the service, right? This is called demand management. Oh, people are demanding this product. Let's bring it forth, right? Mm-hmm. And let's figure out how much it's going to cost. Well, it's going to cost so much to rebuild it, refurbish it, repackage it. repackage it and then ship it, get it to where it needs to be, right? We need to figure out what the cost is and what the value is and whether the customers are willing to pay. Is there enough demand for what you're presenting? And then business relations here means executive relationships, if you will. This is the relationships that executive managers have to maintain with other executive managers either within the company or outside of the company. Summarize every process of each phase. What did I just say?
Memorize everything.
You know that slide I just showed you where it has all the processes?
Yes.
It is your job to memorize that table. Okay? If you're lost and you're having a hard time figuring out where to start by memorizing that table, because I should be able to say, okay, tell me the processes. Deshaun, you remember this? Deshaun and I had a fun time a couple of semesters ago, going through these processes. But what are the processes for service strategy? Service management is one of them, right? So service management is a set of specialized organization capabilities for delivering value to the customer in the form of services. Okay? By the way, on these PowerPoints, I do have some comments in the bottom of the PowerPoint, so you should download the PowerPoint and also look at the comments when you're doing your studying, because that's really important. Reno.
Are all your diagrams in the PowerPoint in the book? Like the service cycle, life cycle processes, is that in the book?
Right.
Oh, but it's in the PowerPoint. Right?
The PowerPoint is on the,
it's not in the book.
website.
On the website, yes. Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, I know I'm a little all over the place right now, but that's okay. I want you to understand that a lot of times it's going to feel like it's a lot and like it's not making sense, it's not connecting. It's okay. Because this is what I'm doing basically. I am giving you dots. I'm going to give you dots. I'm going to give you one dot here. Then I'm going to give you one dot here. Then I'm going to give you another dot here. And you're like, what is that? It doesn't even make any sense. But then I'm going to give you another dot. Then I'm going to give you another dot. Then another dot. And then another dot. And then another one. And then another one. And then another one. And then a whole bunch of others, right? So that when you connect the dots, then you get the entire thing. You guys see that? So sometimes it's going to feel like this professor's just giving me dots. It doesn't make sense. Just hang tight. Because at some point, we're going to get to the point where I'm going to say, okay, remember those dots I gave you? Now let's connect them together and let's see how it looks like. You're cracking up back there. All right, what is the objectives of ITIL? It's to describe the core components of service management, the service management life cycle. It allows for the discussion of the relevance of the IT service management to an organization. Are we bringing value to the organization with this service? Okay. If I get hired as a director, for example, for a new company, first thing I'm going to do is try to figure out what's going on. What services are we providing? Let me get all the details of all the services. Let me figure out who the human resources are, right? What are their job titles, job descriptions? That's part of the deal as well. Are these services that we're providing relevant? How can we improve those services? And of course, we're going to prepare for the certification exam. Service life cycle has phases, right? So these are basically the phases. The things that we're trying to take into consideration are the capabilities. Do we have the human resources, and then resources as in equipment, and location, and physical devices that we may need, okay? Again, we're going to go through the lessons video The flashcards, I'm going to talk more about the flashcards when we get there. The quizzes you can take 3 times, but only the highest score counts. Okay, and you should take those at home. I will give you some time when we get there to take the quizzes here, but you feel free to do those at home. We do have a process for practicing for the actual final exam, and I will make those resources available when we are done with the lecture. And basically at the end of this week I will make those resources available, and then you'll have the weekend and next week to practice with the practice exams. Yes?
What score do you think?
100%. You should be shooting for 100% on the quizzes. You can take them 3 times.
Okay, what's acceptable to you though?
Acceptable to me is 80%. Yeah, 70 is kind of less than 70. It's a concern. If you already took the exam 3 times and you haven't scored more than 70, we might need to talk. Okay.
I mean, I just want to.
What's the question?
After talking, if I'm just asking that if you cannot get that point, so what will be happening again?
We're gonna have a conversation at that point. Okay. For the actual exam is multiple choice. There may be some questions that you need to type in, but I don't remember that being the case in ITIL. Okay, they're all multiple choice questions. There are 40 questions in the final exam, and the passing score is 65% for the actual final exam. So it's pretty doable. Okay, you have to get 26 questions out of 40. That's 65% to pass the exam.
No sims?
No sims. Not in this exam. You're gonna have 1 hour, and you're gonna have to go to the testing center, Pearson View, okay, where you're gonna take the exam. Yes, sir.
I think it's multiple choice, but is it like some exams there's, let's say, 5 options, you choose one, right?
It is, yeah. Some of the questions are multiple options, okay? Some of them are multiple choice. Yeah. Yeah, this gives you 2 ITIL credits. This is just the foundation, right? So you're just getting certified right here. This is the only thing you're achieving. After you do your ITIL foundation, you can actually move forward and take some specifics, right? Get certified in the different modules of the life cycle, right? I can become an expert in strategy, for example, and get a certification for that. I can become an expert in service design, get a certification for that. I can become an expert in service transition, get a certification for that, right? And then, people who are want to go into management, okay, or if you have some management background and you want to integrate it into IT, this would be a good path to take, right? If you're an ITIL master, you're making 100 grand, and you're managing some company of sorts, okay? What is ITIL? Again, it's a set of recommendations for best practices for IT service management. Basically defines how to manage the various responsibilities of all parties in a value chain. It's not a standard, it's a framework, okay? That's very important. Test material. Is it a standard? Not a standard, okay? Not a standard. So again, the different phases are service strategy, service design, service transition, service operation, and continual service improvement. You need to memorize that. What are the phases of ITIL? And continual service improvement. Is it a standard? Not a standard. It's a framework. It's a set of recommendations. It's non-prescriptive. That's a key word also. You should write that down. What is ITIL? It's non-prescriptive. It's a set of recommendations, okay? Not a standard. What are the phases? Service strategy, service design, service transition, service operation, and continual service improvement are the 5 phases of ITIL. Okay, and again, you're going to see some acronyms at times. Or you might see the design look like this, okay? So, the service strategy, right? The service life cycle tracks what? It tracks the service from inception to retirement, from beginning to end, basically. The hub of the design is, or the hub of ITIL is the service strategy. By the way, you should at some point take a quick look at this right here, because this also outlines ITIL, okay? And when you first look at this, it's very overwhelming. But as we progress in the learning, this image right here will begin to make sense, okay? And we'll go through that image once we get there. Okay, so what is the hub or the center of the ITIL?
Service strategy.
Service strategy. And what are the concepts that we're trying to cover here? We're trying to cover value creation, business case, value creation and business case. What are the processes for service strategy? Service management, demand management, business management, financial management. No, continual service improvement is another phase altogether. Okay, so the hub is the service strategy, and the outside is the continual process improvement, or the continual service improvement. CSI, continual service improvement, looks for improvements in all of these stages, right? That's basically what we're doing. At some point, we're gonna need to, we do that here at Empower. We need to sit down and figure out what we did, and how we did it, and how we can improve. The version that you're receiving of ITIL today is an improved version over the last time that we had this class, if you will. So again, this is high level right here, because it gets down to the details in the other slide. But in any case, the focus is service strategy. The focus is to develop capacity to achieve and maintain a strategic advantage. A strategic advantage over what? Over the market, over our competitors, okay? We define and create policies, guidelines, and processes that cross all of the life cycle. That's why it's in the center, right? Because we're creating a strategy that covers all of this. Here we're going to have, you know, the intellectual conversations about, okay, how are you going to make it happen? Do you have a real good business case? You know, a lot of this is forecasting. It's basically just guessing, you know, guessing when you don't have the information to back up your forecast, and forecast when you actually have information that backs up what you're expecting to see at the end. And you know, this is where a lot of errors are made, because if we are transitioning into operation and we didn't put enough dollars there for human resources and equipment during the strategic phase, then we're going to have a problem, okay? And that we're trying to make sure that we alleviate the problems beforehand by strategizing, okay? That means that we need contingency plans, for example. We need additional dollars. You know, it may be that in your budget you have to add dollars for miscellaneous cost that may arise, okay? So in the service design, we're trying to design what will eventually become operational, okay? We're actually doing the design. We're actually working on the computer and writing contracts and so on and so forth. Right here, we are writing material because everything needs to be documented. All the processes need to be documented. All the meetings need to be documented. This is why we had minutes in our meetings, note taking and so on and so forth. The design for new, change, or updated services. That's what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to design new services. We're trying to update services or change services. Okay, During the transition, we provide guidance for the development and improvement of capabilities, okay, so that we can become live service operations. So this is where we run beta tests. Let's test it out, okay? Okay, that didn't work. Let's change it a little bit, and then, you know, let's make sure that before we become operational, we've done our homework. In the operation, this is where we actually manage the day-to-day operations. A lot of you might end up in jobs where you get hired to be desktop support, for example, okay? And so you're going to be in a call center. Well, you're jumping into the environment at this stage, right? That's where I'm jumping, because somebody already did the strategy, somebody already did the design, somebody already did the transition, and they're hiring me now to make sure that I assist with the everyday operations of the service by providing desktop support. At that point, you might say, well, why didn't they do it this way or that way? We should do it this other way. And your boss is going to be like, hold on, chill out. You just got here. Yeah, you just got here. You can't just come here and, you know, start making changes. You got to, like, go through the process, you know, get some experience, and then at some point we're going to have to, you know, we're going to have a meeting and we're going to listen to your recommendations, and then we'll figure out whether you have a business case, okay, and then we'll take that back to the service strategy phase. You know, we'll call a meeting with the executives and pitch the service or the change that you're recommending to the process to the executives, and hopefully get a green light to move forward and go ahead and make the improvement. You can't just go to a company and start making changes if, you know, there is a process in place. And so they're hiring you to conduct the everyday operations if they're actually hiring you for that. But at some point, it may be that you become involved with all the other phases because, hey, the executives a lot of times don't know the detailed technical, and that's why they hire you. In a previous job that I had, my executive always invited me to meetings, executive meetings, and that was great experience for me, but for executive purposes. But the reason why he invited me is because I could talk technology, and he couldn't. And so when he was proposing a new contract or an agreement with another company, and they started asking technical questions, he wouldn't know, like, I don't know what the hell you're telling me, right? And so he needed me there so that I can tell him whether we had the capability to do it or not, okay, or what equipment we needed, or what human resources we might need to think about, okay, in order to consider what he was proposing. And we're dealing with, you know, $300,000, $1 million, and so on and so forth, decisions. And so my input was very important. But my point is that it may be that they hire you to run day-to-day operations, but at some point they might call you into a meeting, right, and say, hey, come here, I need you to be in this meeting. And aren't meetings boring? Yeah, she's like, yeah. You know, I work with a guy, his name is Ben Delane. He's going to listen to this. So hello, Ben. Really cool guy. He ran a department within an organization that I worked. But that guy had a unique ability to fall asleep in the meetings, like this, like, and even snore. But if you asked him a question, he would wake up and go, oh yeah, it goes like this, and it's like that. And I mean, it was like, damn, Ben, how do you do it? Okay, so you had a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. You mentioned evaluations and beta testing. Does that only come at the operation stage, or do we double check and benchmarking through this stage?
Beta testing happens in the service transition phase. You see how that works? That's a great question, by the way. The question was whether beta testing takes place in other phases of the ITIL process, and the answer is no, right? We conduct beta testing here during the transition. And basically what we do is we provide some of the service. Microsoft does this, for example. They will strategize on a new operating system, okay, or a new application. Then they will design it, and then they will, during the transition process, they will release the software to software developers, for example. And then the developers, this is the beta testing process, right? Either it's going to be either, sometimes beta testers need to be paid. Okay. In some cases, like Microsoft, what they do is they distribute the software to developers, and then they get the feedback from the developers. And then the purpose of the beta testing is so that we can make the improvements right here, right now, before we go into operations. Because, see, a perfect example of that is the Obamacare website. What happened when the Obamacare website went online? It crashed that same morning. That same morning, okay? Why? Because they didn't have an opportunity. It was very sloppy. They didn't have the equipment. They didn't have the human resources to provide the support, right, for the people who needed to have access, and they didn't beta test well enough. Okay, you see that? So, and we'll talk more about that in detail, but that's a great leeway, because what happens is we have a data testing process, and then when we're actually transitioning, that gray line between service transition and service operation, there is a process for hiring additional human resources to provide additional support during the first stage of the operation. You see, so these two are very interconnected in how they take place, which is something that you might need to slow down and really analyze in detail, because when you're being tested for this, it could be confusing, right, on whether they're asking me on something about service transition or service operation, right? The language could be a little vague on where within the concept they're trying to ask me the question. But we'll go over some questions and try to clarify that. Okay, in any case, this right here, this is day-to-day operations, actually conducting the work. During the continual service improvement, we're trying to evaluate whether our service is still effective. Does it bring value to the company? Does it add value to the overall mission, vision, goals, and objectives of the organization? If it does, then we redesign it. Maybe we need to redesign it. Maybe we need to improve it. Hey, this is high demand. Now we go back to demand. Where is demand? Demand management is in service strategy. So we need to have more production. Maybe we need to, go to another country and get them to build some of our components. Maybe we have different components being built in different places so that it's more cost effective. That's what Apple does, right? They have one company builds the microchips. You don't even know the name of the company that builds the microchips. Neither do I. Some other company builds the cases. Some other company builds the screens. Some other company builds the headsets. And so they're getting all these suppliers, right, to supply all these components, and then somebody puts it together. Question or comment, Dishon?
Oh, yes, Professor. Is ITIL kind of like a background framework for the SDLC?
What?
Like the steps and the procedures?
What's SDLC?
System development lifecycle.
Okay. Oh, right. But remember that it depends, right? Because software development could be a project, or it could be a life cycle, right? But yes, if we're gonna talk about software, for example, if we stick with the example of Microsoft, not advertising for them, by the way, but these guys should definitely pay me money, because I mentioned a lot of companies in this class, which is great because you need to become familiar with as many IT companies as possible. But what they do is they release the operating system, and after they release the operating system, what happens? Huh?
Find a bug.
Yeah, you find a bug. That's right? There's bugs in the system, and so people are having security issues, and so they're gonna have to release patches. No, they're not calling them patches no more, because a patch does not sound good, right? If I have to patch an operating system, that's almost like I just bought a new set of tires and I haven't even driven the car, and I already have to patch the tire because it's flat. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't sound good. So they have changed the language. Now they're called hotfixes.
You said hot?
Hotfixes. Yeah.
Hot.
No, hot as in H-O-T. Don't worry about it. You'll get my Spanglish eventually. Don't feel bad about it if you're not understand. You go ahead and keep asking. Okay, I'll repeat it. But yeah, hot as in H-O-T. Hotfixes. Okay. Now, if it's a major overhaul, what do we call them? Service packs. Service packs. Right. So an update contains hotfixes, but a service pack contains all the hotfixes that have been released over a certain period of time, plus other additional services or utilities or applications. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to improve the service, okay? But what happens? At some point they're going to say, you know what? We're not going to provide support anymore for this operating system, okay? We're abandoning, we're removing this from our portfolio, from our live catalog, okay? And so we're going to discontinue this operating system. Have you guys seen that before?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so what are they doing? They're strategizing, right? They're moving through the service. The service doesn't bring value anymore to the overall mission and vision, goals and objectives of the organization, and so they're going to have to redesign the operating system, start from scratch. Now we have Windows 10. Okay. Was that painful? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know. You know, I mean, I think if I'm just gonna say this. I think Windows XP was definitely one of the best operating systems, the more robust. They worked on that operating system for 7 years.
Debian was worse.
Okay. And then what happened? Some idiot came up with the idea of releasing a new operating system called Windows Vista, which was a great operating system. Okay, I hear collisions now. Okay, collisions. Hold on a second. What happens when there are collisions? Everybody stops. Okay, and then what happens? All right, yeah, yeah. Then we randomly, right? We select a random amount of time to start talking again. Okay, so check it out. What was I saying?
Some crazy engineer.
Yeah, some crazy engineer, okay, AKA idiot, said, hey, let's come up with Windows Vista. Great operating system. You know, I was lucky enough to participate during the beta process of Windows Vista. It used to be called Longhorn. They always name the application or the operating system a different name before it becomes live, right? It might have it has a code name. And so operating systems have code name. Windows Vista was Longhorn. And so what happened, in my personal view, being that I tested the operating system in under various, you know, scenarios, that when they released the operating system, they released the operating system with specifications that were too similar to Windows XP, so computers could not handle the operating system. You go to the store, you buy a computer with 512 megabytes of random access memory, and you have Windows Vista installed in it, not gonna run. The moment you put a Microsoft Word, and the moment you put all your other games and antivirus programs in the computer, it slows down, it crashes. So what happens? What's your perspective of Windows Vista? It's trash, right? Right? Yeah, well, that's the concept that people got from the experience that they had, because they distributed computers with an operating system that did not have enough hardware equipment to run effectively, in my view, okay? In my personal view. But what happened is that by the time they figured that out, it was too late. The name had already been trashed, the value had been decrease. It doesn't matter what I say to you. In your view, Windows Vista is crap. Okay? So they had to go back to this strategy and phase in the design and say, oh man, we screwed up. let's fire that guy, okay? Let's get somebody else in here. Let's recreate an operating system, and let's start from scratch, and let's increase the hardware requirements, okay? So that we know that this is not going to happen again. So they release what? Windows 7. You guys with me?
Yes.
Windows 7, and so, Windows 7 new operating system, it's great. It's no different than Windows Vista except for the user interface, in my perspective, and a few applications that they added. And of course now they've improved it so much that, you know, Windows Vista is way out there, right? It's one of the big mistakes that Microsoft have made. Similar to the Windows Millennium. You guys remember that? Oh, yes. Windows ME, this is where the blue screen of death became like really... it became really famous, right? That blue screen on your computer with white letters, that's called the blue screen of death. When you get that screen, it's done. It's crashed. You have to disconnect the computer, right? Do a hard boot, and do all kinds of things to get it to run again. But in any case, now we got Windows XP. Windows 7 made a lot of improvements to Windows 7, right? I think Windows 7 is really strong. But then they come up with Windows 10. It's like, dude, I haven't even finished learning Windows 7. Oh, they got Windows 8, right? They got Windows 8 and then now Windows 10. So I haven't even finished learning one operating system, and now I'm learning another one. Now, it's good for us as technicians, you know, as IT folks, that this happens, because that means that a lot of people are going to need technical support, and so our jobs are safe, right? We're good. They're going to need us. See, that's the beauty about computers failing. If you were me, you would not get upset when a computer fails. I don't get upset. I get happy because I'm like, yeah, it fails. That's great. That means you need me. Okay? My job is secure. I don't want computers to work all the time and never fail. That's not fun. In any case, let's